Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mahaiwe Performing Arts Center. Tonight, the Berkshire Eagle and Mahaiwe Performing Arts Center present At the Crossroads, a forum on the South County District merger proposal. My name is Kevin Moran, and I'm the executive editor of the Berkshire Eagle. I wish to thank our participants here tonight. I also want to thank the community television for the Southern Berkshires for broadcasting this forum. And thank you all for attending yourselves. For those who were unable to attend tonight, the Eagle will have a story first thing tomorrow morning in your paper and online. We will also have a lengthier story about the forum tonight a little bit later online tomorrow, later morning, early afternoon. And the CTSB video will be available for later viewing too, perhaps as soon as Friday. Later this month, voters at town meetings will decide whether Southern Berkshire and Berkshire Hills regional school districts will consolidate into one regional school district. Our main goal here tonight, given a limited amount of time, is to provide citizens with an overview of the proposal from the 8-town Regional School District Planning Board, and to hear a group of people who have organized responses in opposition to this proposal. To my right, your left. The Berkshire Eagle asked for and received many questions from the public ahead of time, which we have organized. We have taken all the frequently asked questions and assembled them all together. We will not be taking questions from the floor. There's a lot of information to go through. We could be here all night if we wanted to. This is the fastest way to get from point A to point B. We will ask as many questions as time does permit. I want to make clear that both sides here have agreed to the format of this forum as well. Both sides will give presentations. The 8-town panel will go first and have up to 20 minutes to give their presentation. The opposing viewpoint will have 15 minutes to present. The 8-town panel gets more time because their proposal forms the foundation of all that we're talking about here tonight. Each side, if they don't use their full allotment of time, will be able to reserve any unused time during the presentations to respond to the other's presentation at the very end of both presentations. But if they use all the time for their presentations, that's that. Then we will have a Q&A, and we will ask as many questions as time permits, up until about 8:15. At 8:15, we will stop the Q&A and allow the folks, the opposition will have 3 minutes to close, and the 8-town panel will have 3 minutes to close as well. As the Eagle's editorial stated, discussions about our schools and regionalizations plans can be sensitive subjects that elicit passionate response, and rightly so. I implore everyone here tonight to temper passions with civility and model the same sensitivity in hearing out others that you'd expect from them. To that end, I ask everyone to hold your applause till the end. Thank you. Allow me to introduce the representatives of the 8-town Regional School District Planning Board. The 8-town Regional School District Planning Board, or board, recommends that the towns of Alfred, Egremont, Great Barrington, Monterey, New Marlborough, Sheffield, Stockbridge, and West Stockbridge join to form a new pre-K regional school district to be known as the Southern Berkshire Hills Regional School District, and to be governed by the terms of the proposed regional agreement forwarded with their recommendation. Lucy Prashker from Alfred is the chair of the Regional School District Planning Board. Jake Eberwein from Dalton is the project manager with a consulting group that's assisting the planning board. Deb Phillips is the chair of the planning board's Educational Quality Subcommittee. Nadine Haver from Sheffield is the chair of the planning board's Finance Subcommittee. John Silbert from Monterey is the chair of the planning board's Operations Subcommittee. Colin Smith from Sheffield is that town's representative to the Regional School District Planning Board. Lucy, are you and your panel prepared to give your presentation?
We are, Kevin.
All right. Well, let me get settled here, and I'm going to start the clock when you're ready to begin. Are you ready to begin?
I'm ready to begin.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here tonight in this beautiful and historic theater to talk about this very important and historic decision that we as an 8-town community will be making at our special town meetings in a few weeks. And that decision, boiled down to its essence, is whether by creating a single new pre-K through 12 school district, we can do better together what we are currently doing apart. Before we get into the specifics of why our 8-town board thinks creating that new district together is the right choice, I'd like to turn the floor over to Nadine to talk a bit about how we got here. Nadine?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I would like to tell you how we got here tonight. In the spring of 2019, the Berkshire Hills School Committee sent a letter to the Southern Berkshire School Committee to ask if they wanted to discuss the possibilities of merger of the two high schools. The select boards of all 8 towns were CC'd on that letter. The Southern Berkshire School Committee voted that they were not interested in having that conversation. In August of 2019, Sheffield's Select Board Chairman, Renee Wood, had school consolidation on her list of goals for our board for that year. I offered to take on the issue. In September of 19, the 8 select boards came together to decide if this should be a town-led discussion, since the school committee had refused. There was, however, the elephant in the room, and that was the question, did Berkshire Hills only want Southern Berkshire to help get their new school built? At this very first meeting, Charlie Ketchen from Alford asked that exact question directly to Steve Bannon, and Steve's response was, absolutely not. We are now prepared to build on our own. You see, Berkshire Hills had made a regional agreement change that shifted more of the capital costs to Stockbridge. Stockbridge essentially agreed to pay twice as much so that the new school could be built. So Berkshire Hills is confident that they will build with or without Southern Berkshire. In January of 2020, the Regional School District Planning Board was formally formed with specific membership requirements and a specific state mandate. Each town would have 3 appointed representatives, with 1 being a currently serving school committee member from each town. And our job was to do 4 things. 1, to study the fiscal and educational advisability of establishing a regional district. 2, to develop an estimate of construction and operating costs. 3, assessing the education soundness, methods of financing, and any other matters pertaining to the organization and operation of a regional school district. And 4, reporting the board's findings to the selectmen of the requesting towns. More than 30 volunteers have responded to the request from their select boards. These unpaid volunteers participated in over 180 public and Zoom-streamed meetings over these last 3.5 years. Our state charge was not to plan the curriculum or design, engage a project manager and architect who would price out a new high school. In order to get that cost, we would have to know what we are building, how many kids, which vocational programs, and other design decisions to be decided by the new school committee. If we vote yes, that would be the next step in the process.
Thanks, Nadine, for giving us that important historical perspective. So at the very start of our work, we looked at where the 2 districts currently are. We looked at baseline and what our challenges are. And I think that's up on the screen now, Jake? Okay. So here are the challenges. Staggering declines in enrollment over the last several decades. But while enrollment declines, our operational costs go up, as do the needs of our students. Flat state revenue. So with rising operating costs, we have rising tax assessments. And all of this puts tremendous pressure on the ability of our school districts to provide our kids with the broad range of programs and support that they need, much less expand those offerings. So I want to pause here on enrollment declines because that really is foundational to why we began this work, the challenges we face ahead, and the solution that we propose. Here are the numbers. We've had a 37% decline in enrollment across the 2 districts since the year 2000. That decline is projected to be a 52% decline by the year 2030. So in that 30-year span, a 52% decline in student enrollment across the 2 districts. I'm told there's a lot of social media chatter about whether these numbers are real. They are. The actual numbers, where we were in 2000 and where we are now, come from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. These are the numbers that the districts themselves report to DESE. The projections come from our Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, and the commission has been largely correct in those projections over the years, and the projections are consistent with projections of other organizations listed on this slide, the New England School Development Council and MARS. So those are the challenges. And looking at those, our finance subcommittee concluded that our current model of operation is not sustainable. What does that mean? That means either taxpayers will need to agree to pay more at higher and higher rates of increase, or programs and personnel will eventually need to be cut. That's when we engaged, after that conclusion was reached, that's when we engaged Jake's research team to explore and present to us other options, other possible models of operation. Many models were considered that ran a spectrum from more collaboration, more specific collaboration, all the way to full combination of grades pre-K through 12 in a new single district. The model that our board selected was the model that Jake's research team recommended. And that's up on the screen now. So it's creating a new pre-K through 12 regional school district to be known as the Southern Berkshire Hills Regional School District that maintains all existing elementary and middle schools as they are. They stay in place, but creates a new high school in a state-of-the-art facility to be built on the Great Barrington campus. The new facility would have greatly expanded vocational, which are also referred to sometimes as Chapter 74, facilities and programs, which would be available to high school students in all 8 towns. And the plan is that there would be up to 6 Chapter 74 programs, which would be triple what is currently offered in South County. Why did we choose this model? With a single district, we will be able to realize efficiencies and economies of scale with operating cost savings projected at between $1.2 to $1.8 million every year. And that's factoring in, that's including increases in salaries for Southern Berkshire teachers to bring them into parity with Berkshire Hills teachers, which they are not now. They are paid less now. This is good for students. More choices, academic and extracurricular, more kids, and more support in guidance, special ed, social emotional, and support for English language learners. Plus, vocational and technical opportunities that don't exist currently in either district. Educational benefits and opportunities were paramount. Some of us called it our North Star throughout our work, throughout the 3.5 years. And you will hear more about that later from the chair of our Ed Quality Subcommittee, Deb Phillips. And finally, by joining into the single district, we will have a critical mass, and we will be able to pool resources that will better position us to face the challenges ahead, the challenges we identified in that prior slide, in a way that provides our kids with the education they need and deserve. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about school committee governance. Our towns vary widely in population. My town, Alford, is the smallest. We have 486 residents, according to the 2020 census. The largest of our 8 towns is Great Barrington. They have 7,150 residents, according to that census, and then Sheffield is the next largest with about 3,300. If we did proportional voting on that school committee, as Renee Wood of Sheffield suggested as recently as last week, the Berkshire Hills towns would have a solid majority in the new district. Our board unanimously rejected that approach. We felt strongly that if we were going to join together to form a new region of 8, we should have a governance structure that reflects a unified regional view, rather than a structure that is weighted according to relative town size. So this is where we landed: a school committee of 11 with members elected district-wide, which is how we do things in our districts currently, but with residency requirements, with 3 of our 11 members coming from Great Barrington, 2 from Sheffield, and 1 from each of the other towns. This is really important as you hear about all the decisions that future school committees will need to and should make about curricula, about educational approaches, about early college for all, about capital projects, about amendments to the regional agreement, and the like. Southern Berkshire residents will hold a majority on that school committee. But what we anticipate, and why this is fair for all towns, is that those school committee members will make decisions based on what's best for the kids of all 8 towns, not based on what is best for their individual town. So let's talk about the new high school. Transportation. When we first began this work, I worried that transportation might be our biggest challenge. Turned out not to be. Here's why. First, very importantly, our model keeps elementary and middle school students where they are. So the time spent on the bus by those young children would either stay the same, or if a family opted for a school that's closer to their home than where they currently go, it could be shorter. Additional bonus for those young children: elementary school students from the Southern Berkshire towns would no longer have to ride the bus with high school students, because with more kids and aligned bell schedules, we would have a 2-tier system for all elementary children, with the high schoolers on separate buses, rather than the 1-tier system that we currently have in Southern Berkshire. While some high school students in Sheffield and New Marlborough would have longer bus rides, our independent transportation consultant believes that with a relatively modest investment in some additional vans, maximum time on bus for all students could be reduced from our current 1 hour to 45 minutes. We understand that our current provider of busing services has some concerns about her ability to meet those performance metrics. But that's what our expert tells us, our independent expert, and I'm sure that our current providers will do their very best to work with us to try and make that happen. She did agree early on that there should be no significant increase in cost to joining the two districts. I also want to spend some time addressing the concerns we have heard about who pays for the new high school and how much that's going to cost. So this is how it works. Assuming a price tag of $100 million for a new high school, there's a 90-10 allocation. 90% gets allocated to Berkshire Hills towns, 10% gets allocated to Southern Berkshire towns, and then state aid is subtracted from those shares. So assuming, again, a $100 million high school, the Berkshire Hills towns would be responsible for $41.48 million worth of the debt service, and Southern Berkshire would be responsible for $4 million worth of that debt service cost. And the Southern Berkshire share begins to move up a bit in 2033 after the Southern Berkshire legacy debt is retired. Let's look at what that translates to for a taxpayer with the average home value in the respective towns. Here it is. Look at the numbers for the Southern Berkshire towns. Sheffield, average home, value of average home, the cost each year for that household is $32.79. That's what we're talking about here. The highest of those 5 towns, the 5 Southern Berkshire towns, my town, because our average home assessment is the highest of the 5 towns, is $66.59. Compare that to the Berkshire Hills towns, what the average homes are going to be paying on their real estate tax in those towns. That ranges from $350 a year for Great Barrington to $476 a year in Stockbridge. But of course, they would have that expense, maybe even a little more, whether we combine or not, if they build this new high school. Now, we all know that the $100 million projection is only an estimate. We know that. And life and construction being what it is, the number could be significantly higher. But we can all do the arithmetic here. And to my Southern Berkshire town neighbors, I ask you, take your number and increase it by 50%. If you think joining together otherwise makes sense, it's the best thing for our kids, is that additional cost of, for example, in Sheffield, $16 a year, really going to change your mind? This really is a very modest contribution that the Southern Berkshire towns are making to the cost of the new high school. And think about what we will be getting in return. We will be getting vocational programs and facilities and a bigger school with more choices at a very, very modest cost. Now, we've heard the question, which Nadine talked about earlier, whether this whole initiative is just about the new high school for Berkshire Hills. The answer to that is no. But if you want to answer that question for yourself, you should take a look at the history of our 8 towns talking about merger over the last 70 years. The original planning board in the 1950s actually recommended that Great Barrington and Stockbridge be a part of our very first district, the very first K-12 regional district in the Commonwealth, which was the Southern Berkshire Regional School District. That didn't happen, probably for political reasons. Let's fast forward to the 1980s. In the face of significant enrollment declines, the 2 districts conducted a merger study in 1987. That initiative fizzled in the face of opponents who projected that K through 12 district enrollment in the two districts would stabilize. Wishful thinking that turned out, of course, to be very wrong. The possibility of a merger came up again in the 1990s, this time led by the superintendents. Again, that initiative fell apart in the face of school opposition, and the districts pursued essentially independent agendas for the next 10 years. 2009, an independent consultant was retained to examine the same question. That consultant identified economic and educational advantages to merger similar to those we have identified. Again, school official opposition resulted in the recommendation dying. So our board's conclusion that we could do better together is far from new. But what is different this time is the amount of time and resources that have been devoted to the study, the amount of data and research that has been developed, and how far our board has gotten in this work, including hammering out over the last 10 months a full regional agreement that was approved by 3/4 of our board, a 3/4 majority, and has been approved by DESE.
Lucy, are you close?
I'm very close.
Okay. We will balance it out. We will balance it out.
And what's also happening this time around is that the decision is up to you. Not the superintendents, not the school committees, not even our select boards or finance committees. This time around, the decision is in your hands. Our board has completed its work. We're here tonight, and we will be here right up until your vote to answer your questions.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. We ran a little bit over, so I will add another minute and 15 seconds to you as well. Is that okay?
That's great.
All right. But before I give you that 16 minutes and 15 seconds, please allow me to introduce the representatives who have, for this forum, organized an opposing voice against recommending the proposal that's on the table here. And I shall start on the far end of the table. Jane Burke is founder and director of Flying Cloud Institute, and she is a consultant and teacher with Sparks Science in Art Education. Kevin Fish in the middle is a parent of 3 second graders at New Marlborough Central School, a member of the Transcend Rural Schools Design 2.0 cohort design team, a local business owner and fundraising operations professional at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And Renee Wood, closest to me, from Sheffield, is here as a citizen, not in her official capacity as a member of the select board. She is or has been a member of many local boards in that town, from Conservation Commission to the Board of Health. Jane, are you and your panel prepared to give your presentation?
Yes.
All right. I am going to do my best here to do, 1 second. I'm just going to dial my timer down and get really technical about it. And before we do, are we properly hooked up here?
We are.
We are. Excellent. Are you prepared to give your presentation?
We are.
All right. Thank you. You may begin.
We'd like to start by thanking you, Kevin, for holding this forum with the Berkshire Eagle, the Mahaiwe, the CTSB, and we'd like to thank the Regional Planning Board for their work that they've put into this process. So, after considerable research and careful consideration, we choiced our 3 kids into New Marlborough Central from the Farmington River Regional School District. We were drawn to the small class sizes, the integrative approach and project-based learning, the exceptionally talented and caring teachers, administration, and staff throughout the district, and the wonderful and welcoming school community. Not to mention all the incredible programs offered at all levels throughout the district. Performing Arts Department collaborates across elementary, middle, and high school. Kids as young as 3rd grade can participate in the theater program, which my daughter is really excited about. Drone Zone and Robotics. The Drone Zone provides students with the opportunity to take an aerospace engineering course where they not only learn to fly drones, but also compete in the American Rocketry Challenge and learn how to use a flight simulator. For nearly 2 decades, Mount Everett students have been designing and building automated autonomous systems through the robotics program with an accomplished track record in competitions. Early college. I heard there was a lot of buzz about this on social media today. So this is a program so in partnership with Bard College at Simon's Rock, Southern Berkshire Regional School District has been awarded early college designation from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as the first public wall-to-wall early college in the state. All high school students are automatically enrolled in the program and could graduate with up to 30 transferable credit hours. So the buzz today, I just want to allay fears. This is a grant-funded program. It's currently funded by DESE, who funds early college programs for up to 5 years. Every year you're required to reapply and renew your grant. The application process has not opened yet for 2024, but I can assure you that as soon as it does, we'll be applying for it, while simultaneously securing funding from other sources to continue this program in perpetuity. Innovative Career Pathways. This year, Mount Everett became an Innovation Career Pathways high school. In partnership with Cisco, the program exposes participating students to STEM applications and careers through a combination of technical coursework and work-based learning experiences. The Transcend Partnership. Southern Berkshire District is one of 10 districts in the nation selected to participate in this prestigious Transcend Rural School Design 2.0 cohort. This remarkable opportunity will help to propel Southern Berkshire into a new era of educational excellence, allowing us to transform and reimagine the learning experience for our students. As a parent, providing my kids with the best education is first and foremost. I was excited to learn that a potential merger collaboration was being considered and eagerly wanted to learn more and be involved. I thought, wow, think of all the possibilities. I signed up to attend the first educational visioning session hosted by the planning board, which I thought would be a critical component of any potential merger or collaboration. After attending this session and several subsequent ones, I quickly realized this was not the case and there would be no real educational visioning until the regional agreement was adopted and in place.
So I want to thank Kevin for just conveying to all of us that what we're talking about at Southern Berkshire Regional School are programs in action. And I believe the type of programs that are envisioned by this regional school district. We don't have to wait that time for them to come into place. They exist right now and they're being worked on. I also want to let you know that I'm also part of the Transcend group, and it was fascinating last night when we met to hear about their plans for integrating artificial intelligence, AI, which is going to become crucial to all of our lives. So I want to talk about the warrant. I want to get down to the specifics. And and thank you, Nadine, for reminding us of one of our objectives on the Sheffield Select Board, I've become totally disillusioned with this process and the resulting regional agreement. I have prepared for you. One, you will have an opportunity to get this presentation when you leave tonight. And for those who know me, I do my homework, and it's maybe a little boring, but I have an 8-page handout for you that goes strictly into what is in this regional agreement, not wishes, aspirations, wants, and hopes, specifically the language, step by step by step. So let's talk about what we're voting on. We are voting on what will turn out to be one page. It's our warrant article. And all of us have a duty to go out and vote. I feel very strongly about this. If you're for it or against it, it doesn't matter. You need to be at your respective town meeting and vote. Otherwise, no complaints about what happens. So what's in this warrant article? First of all, what it does is accept some Mass General Law that governs regional school districts, the formations, their duties, etc. The new district will be named, as you can see, and it's formed and governed by the 8-town regional agreement. What you need to also realize, in addition to this regional agreement, that there are 2 subsequent things that must happen. First of all, if this is approved at all 8 towns, there will be a subsequent vote once the true cost of the debt is known for the high school. This vote will be a majority vote of the 8 towns, not each 8 town. Lucy earlier spoke to the population differences, so it's not hard to assume that if this warrant article passes, the debt contingency will pass, if nothing else, by 1 or 2 towns voting. So it's not 8 towns each having a say, it's a majority vote. The second thing is there's special legislation that needs to be enacted because it will permit the transfer, confiscation, ceding, whichever word you wish to use, of all Southern Berkshire Regional School District assets, land, etc., including liabilities, which Kevin will talk about in a minute, without any further action being taken. Okay, so the warrant article can't be amended. You vote it yes or you vote it no. If you try to amend it, it's not possible. It becomes a no vote. So let's go into the regional agreement, okay? So there's copies, I believe, available, and if you don't want to read the whole thing, just read my section, and if you find any mistakes, please let me know. I have spent more time on this than I wish, and I want to point out to you that every word in a legal document is there for a purpose. A shall or may makes incredible difference. If there's things that are not said, they're also not said for a purpose. So you can look at this and read it yourself. The regional agreement is really a governing document. It's not going into the specifics, like Lucy said. We'll talk about how those get done. But we're forming a new district, which was done 70 years ago in Southern Berkshire. This is not an easy process. It's going to take time. It's going to take money. It covers everything from pay, all of these items. You can read it. Let's go on to the next slide. So let's talk about what happens decision-making wise during this transition period. And the transition period is from the time that the transition committee is appointed by each town's select board and their school representative. So for Sheffield, it's 3 people on the select board, and we have 4 school committee members. For places like Alford, it's 3 select board members and 1 person on the school committee. So it's appointed, it's not elected, and it will not be elected until 11/24 at the next election. The operational date, those 2 dates come into play. It's not really set yet. It's either going to be July 1, 25, or it's going to be July 1, 26. So we have a period of time. So this transition committee starts off as being appointed. Politically appointed because it's not elected. If people find offense at the word politically, I'm sorry, but it's being appointed. You're not electing them. This transition committee will eventually become an elected transition committee and then the elected school district. Lucy talked about the representation. I have withdrawn my ideas of representational by population so we can get rid of that canard. The thing that's important is that this transition committee will make every single decision. But at the same time, the 2 existing school districts will oversee and operate their respective schools. But, lots of buts here, they won't establish their budgets. That will be done by the transition committee. They can't make decisions likely to have a material impact on the new district without the transition committee's approval. They cannot fill school choice openings without the permission of the transition committee. 11 people politically appointed. Program offerings will remain the same. The transition committee begins to implement the new district. And let's take a look at their power. It's huge. You got to have somebody who can do this. I want you to read all of this, okay? These are the people making the decisions until the transition committee is elected. So if we go into a couple of the things on the 8-town regional agreement. First of all, school choice is not an opt-in. Every student shall attend the school district closest to their proximity, but they have ways to stay in an existing school if they're there until the middle grades. I'm just thinking that once the high school kids are gone, if this merger is approved, and once the school kids in many towns are going to the closest proximity, which will be Great Barrington, our school's going to be gutted. And I don't want to have it happen, see it happen like what has happened at Searle School or Housatonic. Why do we need to cede, as this regional agreement requires, 85 acres of usable land, all of our buildings, when it's going to be partially a ghost town? I'm going to turn my time over now. If you're New Marlboro or Egremont residents, pay attention to the town-owned buildings and the leases. I'm going to turn the rest of the time over to Kevin because he's got a lot of interesting things to talk about.
Thanks, Lucy. Another considerable cost to think about is the other post-employment benefits, OPEB. Currently, there are roughly $95 million in benefits and pension obligations due for retired staff in the 2 district. You can see the majority is Berkshire Hills. This liability is considered an operating expense rather than legacy debt in the regional agreement, which it should have been, and will be appointed across the 8 towns, negatively burdening the southern Berkshire district towns. So let's go into Appendix A. So we saw this illustration in their presentation. I'd like to, go down and look at what the total costs with interest look like over the course of the 25-year loan. If we take the approach detailed in the regional agreement, we see that the 90-10 split is actually only from FY26 to FY33. At which point in FY 34, 35, 36, 37, and 38, southern Berkshire towns increase by 1 percentage point a year, and Berkshire Hills goes down. And what does this look like? Well, over the course of the loan, the $4 million goes to 8.6 with interest. And if we were to look at a true 90-10 split, the cost for the southern Berkshire towns would actually be $6.6 million. So we're gaining an additional $2 million by the formula used in the regional agreement. We know inflation is happening. Lucy referenced it. But what if we look at a model that's $145 million, which has been suggested is probably more likely the amount that a new school will cost? What do these costs look like? Using the same formulas, we see southern Berkshire towns will pay $12.5 million of the debt, and if it were a 90-10 split, 9.6, an additional $3 million more. So let's get into Appendix B. So how many here and watching really understand the illustration in Appendix B and how your taxes will be impacted? I have to say, bit of a nerd, I did go into it and really, I do understand it and I see how the model works, but I have some questions. How will the $95 million in OPEB debt be apportioned? And an illustration using actual numbers for the past 5 years from each town with new cost estimates and any assumptions made clearly stated would have been a much more illustrative model. The 2% cap percentage increase is a clever way to distribute budget overages among the 8 towns. What happens if the same town is repeatedly over budget? Is it fair to the other towns? Shouldn't this have been considered and detailed in the regional agreement? Why you should vote no on the regional agreement. The designated programs at Southern Berkshire go away. There was no real educational visioning. The capital debt will be much higher. The 95 million OPEB liability is not addressed. The power of the transition committee, too vague.
Thank you, Kevin. We could go on for a very much longer time on these presentations, but I very much appreciate everyone's ability to pack as much into their times as we possibly can. We have questions that we have generated, and we're going to turn to that section now. And some of these questions actually deal with some of the loose ends here that I'm sure this side wants to tug at and that side wants to tug at. And these are questions that we've received because we asked for readers here to send us some questions, and we compiled those and composed those. And we've also added a few questions from our own newsroom here. Are we free to move on? You all ready for the question and answer part? Okay, the way this will work is that...
I feel like I'm on a game show.
You're doing great, Kevin.
Thanks. Yeah. Reality TV, folks. So the way this is going to work is as such. We are going to ask as many questions as time permits in the next little bit here till about 8:15. My plan is that I think you will get most of the majority of the questions up front. But there may be a question or two that I will put to you first, and we'll do our best to get all through it. This is a question, generally speaking, to sort of set the table about the voting, the logistics. This is an all-for-one vote, and so in order for this to pass, all 8 towns must vote yes for this merger to proceed, and a town's yes vote will be determined by a simple majority of its voters at that town's special meeting. If any one town votes against the merger as it is proposed now, it will not proceed forward. We learned this week that Egremont has scheduled its special town meeting on October 21st, which is 2 days ahead of the other towns' votes, 7 of them will be taking on place on October 23rd. If Egremont votes no, and correct me if I have my dates wrong, if Egremont votes no, the proposal here won't pass. If that happens, will the rest of the 7 towns still vote on this item during their special town meetings? And is that necessary? And second, after all the votes are done, and say a town does not go for it, if one town explains what its objections are or were, is there an opportunity to retool the merger proposal and come back with another vote? Or is this issue settled? And you also get a little bit of a chance here to explain what would you say now to convince those who may be on the fence, those towns who may be on the fence. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer that question, and we'll give 1 minute for you all to respond to that.
So Kevin, before you start, I
Yes.
was originally requested to answer this question. The first part, which you just explained, is a 10-second response. The meat of the question, indeed, is what would you say now to convince the towns, aka their voters, who may be on the fence right now to vote in favor of the merger proposal? So
You have 2 minutes. You can do 10 seconds and then 1 minute and 50. Perfect. All right. So your time starts now. So
all right.
Thank
so
you.
The quick answer is yes, it's essential for all 8 towns to vote. If one or more towns vote against the recommendation, we can revise the recommendation and present a new one to the towns in an attempt to address any objections. So that's the short answer, is that it's not the end necessarily. Okay. The question of what would we say to convince people is as follows. So This is a regional issue. Individual towns will vote, a new district may be formed and 2 existing ones dissolved, but the solution we're seeking here is a regional solution. Second, this isn't a vote for the past or for today or even for the near term. The Southern Berkshire Regional School District was formed 70 years ago, Berkshire Hills soon after. So this is a vote for, at minimum, a 50-year future, a vote for everyone presently involved, but mostly on behalf of families who may move here in 10, 20, or even 40 years, and for children who will be born of parents who are now kindergartners. So this is a vote for them, for future students, parents, district employees, faculty and administrators we don't know now, but who are relying on us to make the best decision for all of them. Our 2 districts have served our students admirably. No one has failed to educate. But remember, past performance does not guarantee future results. There are moments when you have to anticipate, moments when you have to invest in the future, and this is a critical one. I understand some voters look at the creation of a new district as a gain, others as a loss. Really, it's both. We will lose some of what we separately have, but we will gain a long-term future together. Do I have a little more time?
14 seconds.
Okay. My biggest concern, to be honest with you folks, is not the people who are undecided, but the people who aren't going to vote. And I really think it's important that we get everyone to come in and debate this, because even if they're...
Amen.
Yeah. Okay.
Amen. Thank you. Everyone should vote on this issue. Now we turn to you all. I'd like to give you a minute to respond in kind to the question at hand.
So it is important that everyone goes out and votes, particularly if you want to vote no, because even though Egremont will, I'm sorry, it's the truth, because Egremont will vote first, but as John just said, I don't believe this is over if only one town votes no. I think if you have a message to send, and you join us and your message is no, not according to this regional agreement. That's all you have to think about. Not the future, not the history. It's this regional agreement and what it does for our curriculum, community, and CAS, or costs. That's it. Come out, vote no if that's the way you vote. Vote yes if that's the way you vote. But a strong message needs to be shown. Egremont cannot tell the other towns how to vote, and they don't want to. They want us to each vote on our own. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next question. If all 8 towns vote to approve the merger, a second vote will then take place to approve borrowing the money needed to build a new high school. That vote also is an all-for-one vote. What's the timeline on that vote, and what happens if the vote to construct a new high school fails? So the second vote. Could you come back at the question again, having addressed the individual concerns of specific towns at that point? And when the 8 towns vote on borrowing for a new high school, the vote will be by sum total of the district's population, a popular vote versus town by town. Why is this particular approach being taken to this vote? And one would seem to think that it would seem like a town like Great Barrington, by its population alone, could swing the decision one way or the other. And I'll give you 2 minutes here. You ready?
Sure.
Lucy, could you just dial up our computer?
Excuse me?
I'm just asking him to make our computer active.
Could the House make the computer active?
Before we answer. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And your time starts now.
Okay, so how soon we'll be taking that second vote? The vote on approving the debt for the new high school depends on how quickly the design and estimating gets done. We think that's likely to happen in the fall of 2024, but it could be earlier, it could be later. There are actually 2 possible methods for debt approval. One allows any town, even the smallest, like Alford, to effectively veto the approval. And the other method provides for a vote by the majority of the voters in the 8 towns. So there are 2 possible methods, and it's up to the school committee, actually, to determine which method to use. The default is majority vote, so majority of the residents across the district, but a 2/3 vote of the school committee could change that to a majority vote in each of the 8 towns. And remember the slide about school committee composition. 6 of those 11 members are Southern Berkshire residents. And also remember the slide about the relative burden on debt service as between the Berkshire Hills towns and the Southern Berkshire towns. And I think that's what Jake's got up now. If the number is too high on this new school, it's the Berkshire Hills towns that are going to be the most likely to object. And they should have that right, as they are paying 90%, or they're being apportioned 90% of the cost of the school. So that's why.
All right, thank you very much. And we're going to give your panel 1 minute to respond. You may begin now.
First of all, I don't believe any of these numbers that are up here. They are based on projection and assumptions, and I think they're been developed. They were not in Appendix B. I think they've been developed to try and change the conversation. Again, this is a majority vote. I do want to point out to you that while Lucy is correct in saying that the school committee, which would be the transition committee, possibly, it may have moved into the elected transition team because this vote has to be taken by a certain time, but it could be taken earlier. While it requires 2/3 of the members on whatever it's called, the elected transition or the transition, can do an amendment, it requires a majority vote of 3/4, not 2/3 as in most agreements, 3/4
Thank you, Renee.
of the member towns.
Thank you, Renee. The minute goes by fast, doesn't it?
I know, thank you.
Thank you. All right, this may be a return to part of the presentation from earlier, but perhaps it just gives you a little bit more time on this particular subject. But our third question of the night is, who will decide the new curriculum and the grading style of the new district? Are you ready to answer this question? And who's answering?
Deb's
All right,
answering.
Deb is answering. Okay, Deb, 2 minutes. Thank you.
So the short answer is that these things will be decided by the same kind of group that decides currently, the school committee and the administration. As we have said, it was not the charge of the school district planning board, but rather the responsibility of those administering the school district. And it'll be made with input from stakeholders such as teachers and experts in the field. It does not mean that we will lose the wonderful programming that's happening in Southern Berkshire right now. And I want to stress that. There are good things happening in the Southern Berkshire Regional School District, and there are some good things happening in the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. And the idea is that we will bring together the best of what's happening in each of those districts. And we will count on the school committee that's making the decisions, which, yes, it's appointed, but it's being appointed by people who we elected, who we have trusted with our school districts. And so they are the ones, with the administrators, with the stakeholders, the faculty, the staff, the students, who will take the best from the school districts and decide what the curriculum and the grading style will be in the new district.
All right. If you still got a little bit more time?
No, I'm gonna...
Any answer there? Okay. All right. Are you prepared to respond to that question?
We are.
All right. And who will be? Kevin, are you going? Okay. Kevin?
So, yes, it is the transition committee and the school committees who will decide this, but I have to disagree with you. The Innovation Pathways designation, the designations for these, the early college designations, and the Transcend Partnership will go away. So I think it's great to hope that these things will all transfer, but I don't believe hope is a strategy. So, I am, like many parents, concerned that we will lose these incredible programs.
Thanks. All set? All right. Great. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to our next question. Thank you, everyone, for being a great audience. Really appreciate that. each school, each district bring unique programs, partnerships to the table. But what happens when there's a merger, and particularly in the high school where there are many extracurricular activities and programs such as Mount Everett's early college program with Simon's Rock or Monument Mountain's distinctive music and arts programs, what may be happening to the sports teams? What happens to these? Are they blended together into the newly merged high school? And while this question, it sounds like it's posed in negative, I'll also just broaden it out to say, what good will come of these programs too? So, who's going to answer this question for us? All right, back to you, Deb, and you have 2 minutes.
So I'm going to reiterate what I said about who's making the decisions, and that our board's projections and recommendation are based on the premise that the best of both districts will be offered. No offerings are being eliminated in our financial projections. Our offerings are being expanded. And there is no reason to believe the committee would determine to jettison a program that's working well in either district. I understand that these are designations that have been given. That doesn't mean that they cannot be given to a new school district. The early college pilot at Mount Everett will, from my understanding, though I understand it can be renewed for many years, the pilot piece of it will be done before the 2026 shift of operations to the new district. The new school committee will be able to explore early college programming with Simon's Rock or other entities to continuing this offering, because offering college experiences and credits is not unique to any district, and early college programs are currently being supported by DESE in many of the districts across the state. Music, arts, and sports offerings, both within the curriculum and as extracurriculars, will be offered to meet the needs of the student body as determined by the administration and the school committee, with input from staff, faculty, and students, as it is done now in each district. In all schools, all programs are reevaluated every year by district leadership based on educational outcomes, as it should be. No course program or policy is baked into district or school plan in perpetuity. What is offered now will likely look different from what's offered 10 years from now, whether we merge or whether we don't merge. One principle that's widely accepted by those who study the issue is that very small districts like ours do have an increasingly hard time maintaining a broad array of courses, programs, and services that meet the diverse needs and desires of all its students.
That's time. Thank you so much.
I'm going to take the answer to
Absolutely, Jane, and I'll
Yeah.
give you 1 minute starting now. Thank you.
We disagree with the assumption that more offerings mean better education. According to Provost John Weinstein from Simon's Rock, the fact that we are a small district means that our kids do better because they have more individual attention, and Simon's Rock can give them a wraparound program. We start our early college in 7th grade, and all kids are included. We also have research that small schools, there's more participation from students in the program because everybody needs to get on board. At Berkshire, Southern Berkshire, 70% of the high school is involved in after-school activities, one or more. They can do athletics and drones and theater. So we don't think that the proposition that more offerings makes for better education. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate it. All right, next question. The cultures is how one reader sent us the question described. The cultures of the two districts and the high schools are different. And the concern is that the cultures of the two districts and high schools don't exactly mesh. Can someone explain what the concern is specifically when it comes to the district's cultures? Who's taking this question?
I'll
Lucy?
take it.
All right, 2 minutes.
Take it. There's actually considerable debate about the nature and extent of any cultural differences in terms of mission statements, objectives, and educational indicators. The districts are actually quite similar. Many teachers have taught at one point or another at both schools. Many families have sent their children to both schools at one point or another. Periodically, the two districts have joined forces, for instance, to field certain sports teams. So we're actually confused by the insistence of some that our two districts are very different. In any event, during the transition period, all constituencies, the transitional school committee, the community, school leadership would be involved in educational planning for a new high school, and we would build a new culture together. And I'll add this, in virtually every other part of our community life, there really are no town divides among our 8 towns. We go to the same high school, that's the same hospital. We shop in the same grocery stores. Our builders, our arborists, our farmers cross town lines. If we choose to, we can successfully do in our schools what we successfully do in other parts of our community life.
Thank you so much. The culture question to you now. Who's answering? Jane, you have time. Go ahead.
Southern Berkshire is unique in that students can enter as infants and go all the way through to high school on the same campus. Our administration is in the same building, actually halfway between elementary school and high school. The superintendent's office is open to children, parents, teachers at all times. And the intimacy of the relationships built over generations of families that have been engaged is quite unique. According to John Bruno, who's taught in both districts, Southern Berkshire is uniquely equitable. All children are treated exactly the same. The inclusiveness has made a learning atmosphere that's unique in his experience as a teacher. So I think it's not what it says on paper, it's how it's lived in the building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's move on to our next question here. The planning board says that Southern Berkshire teachers hired by the merged district would receive pay raises to match Berkshire Hills salaries that are 6% higher. How do you know that this is possible? Do you have any sense of how many teachers and school employees from both Berkshire Hills and Southern Berkshire are projected to be laid off immediately when the merger happens? And what about losses due to attrition? And what about health insurance benefits for retired teachers? Who's answering this question?
Franklin.
All right. And you have time, starts now.
Thank you, Kevin. The RSDP Finance Committee subcommittee discussed this topic at length and made an intentional decision to build in pay parity into our fiscal models. We believe teachers in both districts should be on a level playing field. So yes, the pay raises are absolutely part of our fiscal modeling. The new committee will be charged with bargaining all new contracts for a single district. Until that occurs, the existing contracts remain in place. As we have emphasized, we believe that many staff reductions can and will be managed through natural attrition, retirement, and movement of teachers in and out. However, decisions as relate to budgets, contracts, staffing, and the responsibility will be the responsibility of the 8-town school committee.
All right, thank you. A response to that question? My clock says 1:07, but I'm just going to let it run down to 7 seconds. Okay, go ahead, Renee.
Nadine is right. This will be taken up by the transition committee as one of their powers, which will then go into the elected transition committee. All of this is to be determined. Look in the agreement. This is an operational matter. The Regional School District Planning Board has spent close to $500,000 on their work, incredible work, and they've had a myriad of consultants. I challenge anyone to find 11 people in all 8 towns who can run this on their own, negotiate labor agreements. There's multiple labor agreements in each district. They are going to need a handful, if not a room full, of people to handle that. There are no transition costs allocated currently by the state for this process. The taxpayers will have to pay for it. So please, to be determined.
Thank you. All right, next question. Given the well-documented financial struggles of rural school districts and the data that show the population continuing to decline and student enrollments that would also follow suit in decline, what is the plan? What is the alternative if the merger fails? What plan would Southern Berkshire Regional and its towns have? And are there other ways to combat this student decline, such as keeping and drawing families into the area, like building workforce housing? Is merging the only way forward? Who would like to answer this? Who will answer this question?
I think
I'll answer it.
Go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I think we thought this was maybe a question for the opposition here, but I'm going to answer the actual question here. First of all, I was involved in this group, so this was the solution that I was working on. I'm not aware of any alternative plan having been put forward. And if it's no to the merger, I think the problem does not go away. All of us are going to have to find another solution, not just Southern Berkshire. My opinion is that drawing families into the area or building affordable housing is wishful thinking. And let me illustrate that. To create a sustainable future for Southern Berkshire, and I'm isolating just Southern Berkshire because that's what the question was, we should have at least 80 to 100 kids graduating each year at a minimum. Southern Berkshire are currently on track to graduate about 40 students a year. And that's on the average in the next coming couple years. We would need to add 60 more kids to that group each year in perpetuity to keep the sustainable nature of our programming. So to the question, that means that starting now, bringing in 30 young couples with 2 school-age children each year, not just 30 couples, but 30 couples each year with 2 children, and building them housing for them each year. This concept, by the way, is supported by a Berkshire Regional Planning Council study, and it dealt with the region, but the same idea applies here. We would have to build housing like Great Barrington built on South Main Street. That's about 50 units. We'd have to do that every year. And so I think it's wishful thinking that we can quickly solve the affordable housing situation and at the same time attract a stream of young couples that are willing to have children that will eventually attend our school.
Thank you. And you're right, maybe perhaps that would be the best question to have asked you first, and if I screwed up, I apologize for that. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer this question. What is the alternative if the answer is not this proposal? Go ahead, Jane,
We were deeply engaged in this already with our Transcend grant, where we have specialists in rural education working with us on how to keep a vital school in a rural area, because schools are the center of the culture of our towns. There are many schools that have small class size. The assumption that you need a certain number of students is false. And the affordability is based on old-fashioned models of what schools do. There's thoughts about how we can adapt. We have excellent management of funding in our schools. Our tax rates go up much less than other districts in our region. And I'm confident with Transcend's work with us and with our community members, we will revitalize our area to be more attractive to people. And with the school choice, I don't know what happens with school choice, but we have less kids because we're not convenient like Berkshire Hills, where a large percentage of their student body is school choice. I feel like the school district is not putting their head in the sand and is very excited about this new challenge, because artificial intelligence and collaboration with nonprofits in the area is going to change what schools look like and what the cost of running a school would be. So don't assume that budgets are going to look the same every year, because the school is not going to look the same every year. Thank you.
I'd like to take the last 27 seconds to also indicate that both our representatives, Samiti Pignatelli and Senator Mark, have been working very hard, and we are beginning to see a change in school funding to recognize the unique challenges of rural school districts. We're starting to see that come through the last couple of years. We now have a...
Thank you, Renee. We're getting close to the time when we're going to transition to the closing arguments. I think we'll be able to get in reasonably, one more question. We still have a few more questions that we could have asked. May I just ask if we're to the questions we cannot get to, if you have answers to share, could you send those to us? Same thing, send those to, me, the Berkshire Eagle, and we'll do our best to present those answers on the website in print. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you. So I would like to, I'm going to go to a question about this sort of takeover idea, if everyone is okay. And this question will be to the 8-town committee. And the question is, what do you say to people who keep saying that the only reason a merger is being planned is so that Berkshire Hills can have a new high school? People are saying that this merger is a, quote, takeover by Berkshire Hills that will absorb Southern Berkshire. But won't the Southern Berkshire towns representation from all its towns outnumber that from Berkshire Hills? Are you ready to answer that question? Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. One, this is not a takeover. If we don't move forward together, Berkshire Hills will vote to build their own new high school without Southern Berkshire. They will succeed in planning for the long-term future education of their students, and Southern Berkshire will not be a part of that. Two, no one is being absorbed. This is an opportunity for all 8 towns to form and operate a new district. We are doing this together, folks. There are no outsiders, no others making decisions for us. I cannot stress this enough. We are doing this together. And yes, Southern Berkshire towns, as everyone has said before, will hold a majority on the new school committee. The 5 Southern Berkshire towns will be entirely and effectively involved in every aspect of educating our students for the next 50 years.
Thank you. And who would like to answer this question?
I'd like to take this. First, I want to clarify that when I received the letter as chair of the school committee from Berkshire Hills, it was about creating a 3rd region for a high school. Our response was not no. It was that since our high school, our Mount Everett is a grade 6 through 12 school, it didn't make sense to break that up. So let's talk about the entire pre-K to 12. So it was our idea for the pre-K to 12. The reason we feel like it's a takeover is we have a perfectly good building and in very good repair. There was no real consideration of using that building. There was also no consideration of building this new building between the 2 school districts south of Great Barrington, so it wasn't as if Berkshire Hills can stay in their own home space and Southern Berkshire has to move. That's the takeover feeling. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it is a little past 8:15, which means that it is now time for us to move to the closing arguments. Again, thank you for sharing answers to questions that we weren't unable to get in tonight with us, and we'll do our level best to get those in well before the vote. To that end, moving on to the closing statements, Jane and her group will go first, and let me dial up the magic timer here. Are you ready?
The dreaded timer.
I'm sorry, I know, but you've been all remarkably on time. Yeah, so I thank you so much. Yeah. This is not easy to pack all this in.
Yeah.
All right, Jane, go ahead.
Well, I think we have 2 messages in closing. I have had 40 years working in many of the schools in the Southern Berkshires, and I've come to believe, as do many researchers, that size matters, and the smaller, the better. Because the learning that needs to go on today is very student-directed, and what we need is a small student-faculty ratio so the faculty members can support the kids in their efforts. Studies show that students do better in smaller districts, and the amount of choice really doesn't matter. So my feeling about the experience in schools differs from what the planning board feels. It's also very clear that what we're voting on is not whether we think a merger is a good idea or not, it's whether this regional agreement makes sense. I think if you vote no for this because of the flaws in the regional agreement, you are not shutting the door on merger. We can still talk about collaboration. The two school districts really want to collaborate, but Southern Berkshire feels like this particular agreement is not sufficient for a yes vote, and it needs more work. I really look forward to seeing what we can develop in our region for students and what Transcend can help us learn, because we can share that with Berkshire Hills. Rural schools can survive as small, vibrant entities and maintain being the hub of the communities they serve. Thank you. Oh, I only talked for a minute and 18 seconds. I think I could quote some more people if I wanted to, but I would like others on my team to be able to speak, because it's really a difference of point of view about what education is.
One more minute.
This is really about our community, our curriculum and kids, and our costs. And there's nothing in this merger agreement, as I read it, that is positive for the Southern Berkshire Regional School District towns on either one of those 3 C's. I urge you to vote no, to be informed, to show up, and if you choose to vote yes, that's your prerogative. Everyone should vote. We just seem to favor a no vote for the reasons that we've tried to state today.
Kevin?
24 seconds.
All right. Well, thank you. I agree. You know, in looking at the numbers, it strikes me that the Southern Berkshire towns will receive more of the financial burden than we've been led to believe. So we hope that we illustrated some of that tonight. And again, it's not a no on merger or collaboration, it's the agreement.
Thank you very much. All right, and now we shall turn to the planning board. Lucy, are you ready to give a 3-minute closing?
I am.
And thank you, and I'll start the time now.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight again, and I want to thank the Eagle and the Mahaiwe for organizing this, and Jane, Renee, and Kevin for their participation. Before I begin what I prepared, I just want people to know there's nothing wrong with the regional agreement. That's really not what the issue is here. The issue is whether or not we should merge. You heard in the closing statement that Jane doesn't think larger classes make sense, et cetera. So don't get diverted by the regional agreement. The regional agreement is solid, and DESE has signed off on it. This is a big decision. We understand the question stirs up a lot of emotion, but what your select boards asked us to do and what we have done over these last 3.5 years was to put emotion aside and look at the facts, look at the data, look at the dollars. We took a clear-eyed look at what we offer our students now and what we don't. We looked at where there are gaps and how we might fill them. And we looked to the future at what multiple sets of projections tell us about further expected declines in enrollment and what that will mean for our students and for our pocketbooks. For students, and particularly for high school students, smaller and smaller schools mean fewer and fewer choices. In the classroom, on the sports fields, in clubs, and other extracurriculars, and for students looking for friends. We all know that South County is sorely underserved in vocational education. That's not right for our students, and that's not right or smart for our community. For taxpayers, we're paying more and more to educate fewer and fewer kids. We all see this. Enrollment drops, but school budgets and tax assessments rise. And so we've naturally asked ourselves, is there a way to get more bang for our buck? So we're at a crossroads here. Will there be some bumps along the way if we join? Of course. But the challenges are even greater if we remain apart. We have an opportunity now to change the trajectory. By joining, we open up opportunities for students and for our teachers, opportunities that won't be there if we remain in our separate corners. By joining, we greatly expand academic, extracurricular, and vocational programming. By joining, we provide our kids with more support. By joining, we can find efficiencies and economies of scale to save money. By joining, we can do something really good for our community. The data is there. Together, we can do better for our kids and for generations of kids to come. And that is the right emotion for this moment, doing what is right for them. Thanks.
Wow. We get good at we're right on time at the end. I want to. But it's a lot to think about, folks. So my best wishes as you all go forth and consider this decision that you've got coming up. On behalf of the Mahaiwe and on behalf of the Berkshire Eagle, I want to thank our participants. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to the community television for the Southern Berkshires as well. And again, they will be broadcasting this later, probably on Friday. And finally, I want to thank you. You were a great audience. Thank you for listening. Put your hands together, and now there's some applause. Thank you very much. Get home safely.